you doing, Met fans? And welcome to another episode of the Terry Collins Show, presented by Tunnel to Towers, supporting America's greatest heroes. Donate just $11 per month by going to t2t.org. That's T, the number 2, t.org. I'm John Arezzi, and back for another week as we begin to wind down this season. Direct from Florida, the former skipper of the New York Mets, the last man to take the Mets to the World Series, the longest tenured manager in their history as well, Terry Collins. Terry, welcome back for show number 29 of this season.
Who would have thought it went fast, didn't it, John? The season
did.
As long as that season is, it goes fast on you.
I'm telling you, I can remember us starting it up in March and April, and then what was going on with the Mets then, and the exciting finish. But yeah, it's been a wonderful season. We still have a few more episodes before we wrap it up for this year. This is going to be a good one today. Terry, we're in the middle of the 2024 World Series with the Los Angeles Dodgers taking on the New York Yankees. We're going to discuss it in the leadoff. And we also have a great return guest for Talking with TC today, the former Mets GM and host of the Daily Podcast on the MLB Radio Network, Steve Phillips. But TC, let's get right to the leadoff, which will center around the World Series. After games 1 and 2 in Los Angeles, the series returns to New York in the Bronx, Yankee Stadium. Dodgers up 2-0. And this Dodger team is very deep, and Dave Roberts has been challenged by that bullpen and the pitching staff throughout the offseason. Let's get your take on the World Series so far. What stands out to you between the Mets and the Yankees first 2 games?
Well, obviously, the thing that stands out the most is the key hits that the Dodgers have been getting. I mean, and they're getting them from a lot of guys. You've got Tommy Edman, who he keeps going. It's going to be Freddie Freeman being the MVP of the World Series. I mean, and they've gotten big hits from Betts. They've gotten big hits from Will Smith. They've gotten, Hernandez. You have Teoscar Hernandez the other night with the big home run. They have really spread out the wealth. Now, we knew their lineup was really good. And my issue was going to be, how is that bullpen going to hold up? Because they had such starting pitching issues. But, Yamamoto was very good the other night. Flaherty he gave him a good start. But now it's going to depend on what Buehler's going to do. He's not the same guy that we've seen in the past. And tomorrow night's going to be a bullpen game. So it's really a huge chance these next 2 days for the Yankees to get right back in this thing.
Yeah, it certainly is. If Judge can find his way and start hitting, I mean, the captain of the Yankees has gone 1 for 9 so far, and he's got to step it up. If the Yankees are going to have a chance in this series, they're not going to be able to do it without their captain, Aaron Judge. Would you agree, Terry?
Absolutely, John. You've hit it right on the head. I've said this for a long time. If you're going to win a World Series, your star players got to play like stars. And here's the MVP in the American League, and he is really, really struggling in the middle of that lineup. And Soto can only do so much, and it's got to. And Giancarlo Stanton, even though he keeps getting big hits, we know the key to that lineup is Aaron Judge, and so he's got to get it going for them to get back in this thing.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. And Freddie Freeman, I mean, I remember the 88 series. I remember Kurt Gibson hitting that home run and circling the bases with him being hobbled, and Freeman coming up with the bad ankle that he's had for several weeks now, and all of the stuff that's gone on in the offseason with his son, and to have him hit that grand slam walk-off first time in World Series history. It was an amazing moment. And I think, Terry, that moment will probably live in baseball history, especially if the Dodgers can win this series.
Well, no doubt. I mean, even to this day, we keep being reminded of the home run that Kirk Gibson hit. And, that's right. A great story in itself, how he was back there hitting almost the entire game, seeing if his knee could hold up. And sure enough, he sent the word to Tommy Lasorda, I can hit. And so that was the biggest home run in certainly in Dodger history and in World Series history. Now, Freddie Freeman, of course, has now replaced that, hitting a grand slam. But I'll tell you one thing, Freddie Freeman's dangerous, John. I'm going to tell you, He is a dangerous, dangerous hitter. And when he hits behind those two guys, there's always guys on base. So he's going to drive in runs, and he's not done. He's this guy, when he gets hot, is one of the best hitters in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a great series to watch so far. Certainly, the crowds just ramped up in Los Angeles, seeing their Dodgers go up 2-0, and now they go back to the Bronx to see what the Yankees can do. And it'll be a good series. It's been an exciting season so far, and we'll continue to watch the World Series, and we'll report on it next week here. TC. Similar to the 2015 Mets, the 2024 Yankees are heading back home down 2-0 in this World Series. After leaving Kansas City, when you guys went down to 0-2 in 2015, what's the feeling from a team? I'm sure you don't give up, but when you're coming home and returning to that home ballpark after a rough two-game opening at a World Series, talk to us about what that was like back then.
Well, losing game one hurt us in 2015 because we had the lead going into the ninth inning, and when Gordon hit the home run to tie the game up. But our guys still had great confidence, and we were going home where we had played very, very well during the playoffs. So guys had all the confidence in the world, and certainly Noah on the mound, we felt very, very good about coming home. And so again, we just we ran into a buzzsaw the next two nights after game three, game four, and game five. I mean, they came up with big hits and big plays, and but you still have confidence because you're one of the only two teams left. So
Yeah.
I think the Yankees getting back in their ballpark where they're so dangerous, and even though that Dodger lineup, they're dangerous in every ballpark, but it's going to come down to that again. Who's going to pitch the best tonight or for the next three games?
Absolutely. Well, TC, this is another big week for Tunnel of Towers. They have two ribbon cutting ceremonies for smart homes and a groundbreaking for a new Veterans Village in Charleston, South Carolina. The foundation is presenting mortgage free, specially adapted smart homes to two disabled service members who sacrificed their bodies for our country. The Veterans Village will provide permanent housing for homeless vets, along with a full menu of critical services. And there'll be a groundbreaking for another Veterans Village on November the 7th. That will be in Denver, Colorado. TC, the commercial with you that you did for Tunnel of Towers is now running nationally. I saw it several times on various networks. So that must be a great feeling if you had a chance to see it on TV. But it's running everywhere now. There's another spot with Andy Pettit they just released. So that's pretty cool that people are now seeing this all over the country now.
Yeah, I hear it a lot, John. I go to the golf course, and every time I go out there, somebody said, "Hey, I saw your commercial last night." Hey, I saw your commercial last night. So yeah, it's a big thrill, and I'm glad it's out there. And
Yeah.
certainly whatever you can do to spread the word, you got to be willing to do it because it's amazing how many people I have run into now that have said, "Oh, geez, I've been a part of Tunnel of Towers for the last few years," and he said, "I'm really glad that you're involved with that now." So still one of the great foundations in America.
Absolutely is. And we'll be back with This Week in Mets history right after this word from Tunnel to Towers and Mets first baseman Pete Alonso.
Tunnel to Towers helps so many people. As a player of the Mets, I feel like for me, I have a responsibility to give back, especially to a cause that's authentically New York. And I just want to show appreciation for those brave men and women who really do a massive service, not just in New York, but everywhere. Hey, I'm Pete Alonso. Let's go Mets, and let's help the Tunnel to Towers Foundation.
Go to T2T.org for more information about how your donation can make a difference.
Now it's time for This Week in Mets history. October the 25th, 1986, Game 6 of the World Series. The Mets are down to their final out. In an amazing turn of events, Gary Carter, Kevin Mitchell, and Ray Knight record two-out hits, and Mookie Wilson wins it for New York with the famous little roller up that first base line that went in between Bill Buckner's legs. Let's take a look at that right now.
And it's going to go to the backstop. Here comes Mitchell to score the tying run, and Ray Knight is at second base.
he hardly moved as far as shifting, and it gets by him a wild pitch. Apparently not near where he was looking for the pitch.
Can you believe this ball game at Shea?
Oh, brother.
So the winning run is at second base with 2 out, 3-2 to Mookie Wilson. Little roller up along first, behind the bag. It gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it. If one picture is worth 1,000 words, you have seen about 1,000,000 words. But more than that, you have seen an absolutely bizarre finish to Game 6 of the 1986 World Series. The Mets are not only alive, they are well, and they will play the Red Sox in Game 7 tomorrow.
I remember that game. I was there. I wanted to leave. I didn't want to see the Red Sox clinch on the Mets Shea Stadium hallowed ground. And even after the Mets scoreboard made a mistake by posting congratulations to the world champion Boston Red Sox, my friends that I was with convinced me to stay. And then that's when that amazing rally happened. So I was happy I stayed. And then we're going to go to October the 27th, 1986. Facing an early 3-0 deficit in Game 7 of the World Series, the Mets rally from behind for a second consecutive game against the Red Sox to capture their second World Series championship. Ray Knight is named Series MVP with a .391 average and hitting the go-ahead home run in the deciding Game 7. So let's take a look at Game 7 of that 1986 World Series right now.
Got him!
that was the last Mets World Series win 38 years ago. So with everything that's been going on this season, the magical finish and the hope for future seasons, maybe we'll see another World Series next year, which is the 10th anniversary of the Mets' last World Series appearance. And now it's time for Talking with TC. Today on Talking with TC, we welcome back one of our favorite guests of this past season. He served as the general manager of the New York Mets from 1997 to 2003, assembling a team that made it to the World Series in 2000. His daily baseball news show on the MLB Radio Network, The Leadoff Spot, can also be heard on SiriusXM each weekday morning. He's a baseball analyst for TSN and TSN 1050. He's one of the top baseball insiders. Always a pleasure to welcome back to the Terry Collins Show, Mr. Steve Phillips. Steve, welcome back to Talking with TC.
Oh, thanks. Good to be back with you guys again. Had a lot of fun the last time we got together and looking forward to talking some baseball.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve, I appreciate you taking some time out today. So I've been when John told me you were going to come on, I said, I got the biggest question. So what's the big topic that you guys are discussing now? What's the biggest topic on the radio show?
Well, I think right now it's twofold, right? We came into the World Series thinking that it was Judge against Ohtani, and it still is, although the Dodgers up, in the series, but Ohtani now with his shoulder and what's that going to do to impact him moving forward? And for Judge, just, it's kind of heartbreaking to watch. I mean, the guy's had a great season. And he's lost a little bit at the plate right now, right? Striking out, another offer with 3 strikeouts, swings and misses. And so the stars are a bit diminished where now some of the complementary players are starting to kick in. But it does come down to what's Ohtani going to be, what's Judge going to be, and the impact of those guys in the World Series.
Yeah, I looked at after the other night when Ohtani got hurt. You, as a GM, you play him today?
Well, I always sort of defer to doctors. But I think what people have to understand is that shoulder injuries for hitters. Now, the good thing is it's not his front shoulder, right? It's his left shoulder, right. The backside. Right. The number of guys, I think maybe even David Wright at one point had a shoulder thing. And, what happens, I know Conforto had shoulder issues as well back in the day with the Mets.
Right.
And there's this subconscious protection that hitters do when they have sore shoulders that they swing trying to avoid that sharp pain, and they don't necessarily, but the bat path can change, right? And so you worry a little bit about that for Ohtani. I mean, they said his strength was good. I get it. But I mean, my experience is like I have 4 boys. We had 6 shoulder surgeries between the 4 boys. So I've had a lot of experience around this of subluxations where the pops out of socket, pops back in. And once that happens, you're prone to it happening again. We saw it with Fernando Tatis Jr. with the Padres a couple years ago. And so I am worried about it. I'm a little less worried because it's his left shoulder, the back shoulder, not the lead shoulder where the follow through on the swing might pop it out. But, I guess if the doctors say he's okay to play, I play him. But I am holding my breath every time he swings the bat.
Yeah, I am too. I just, and I want to win worse than anybody, especially being a manager, that's all you're thinking about. But I got to be really careful with this one. You got a 2-0 lead, and, the one thing you don't want to lose this guy for, if this goes 6 or 7, you want to have him in the lineup. And I agree with you. I mean, is he going to slide anymore? I mean, anything that's going to affect that shoulder. And, just like you said, I mean, I was there when obviously Conforto's shoulder came out of place. And after that, I mean, it's just you're waiting for it. Just as you said, you're up there swinging. And if you swing one time and you feel it, now every time you swing, you're waiting for that pain. You're almost sensing that pain. And then, like you say, you change that bat path or your swing at all. It's sometimes they're hard to fix, man. When you create a bad habit. I just be very, very careful in this situation.
Yeah, and look, it's Ohtani, so you never really want to doubt this guy and with what he's done. But you think about how dinged up everybody is at the end of the season. I mean, Freddie Freeman, with that ankle, I've heard some reports that he's got broken bones in the foot. And so the 5 days off did him some good. And especially for him with the front foot, the right foot, to be able to get that foot down, to be able to hit against that for power. And now it looks like maybe he settled in a little bit, but the time off helped him. So you're right. You don't want to lose Ohtani for the whole series and have him compromised. but you also don't want to let the Yankees back in, right? So you're sort of
Right.
damned if you do and damned if you don't, not sure what to do with it because you know how this is in the postseason. You got a team on the ropes, you want to put them away. And you leave any crack of the door open and they get back in and they get life and they get momentum and they're at home for 3 games. The crowd gets in and you got a bullpen day coming. There's so many things that go wrong. So it's a tough call. It would be one that I'd let doctors sort of make for me.
Yeah. That's and obviously Shohei, he's got to have a say. I mean,
Right. Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
He said, "Hey, look, I'm fine. It's back in. We're going to throw some tape around it anyway. We're going to keep it supported." But yeah, that'd be a question. But I'll tell you, if Aaron Judge doesn't start swinging, the Yankees are in trouble. I'm sorry.
Isn't that the truth? I mean, I saw a note in the last 5 games, he has swung and missed at 32 of the 59 swings that he has taken, which is like a 54% whiff rate, where during the regular season, he had a 31% whiff rate. And, where I want to credit the Dodgers pitchers for getting him out, I actually think he's just getting himself out right now. And it's not so much his swing, although he is pulling off, but he's pulling off because he's starting late. And that the only way he can get the bat head into the zone when you start late is to try to open yourself up to try to get there. Then you leave the outer third of the plate untouched, and that's where they're going. They're throwing sliders in the outer third. He's pulling off everything, but his problem is what's going on in his head. It's not really a swing issue. It's a thinking issue, I think, that's gotten him in some trouble.
Well, Steve, obviously the game is different. So I'm talking out of school because I'm an old school guy, but I know I've been around some of the greatest hitting coaches in the history of the sport. And when you especially guys who can hit or who are good hitters, and when they get in the slump, the first thing you tell them is, hey, let the ball come to you. You got to let the ball get deeper, man. And his power this guy's got, he can hit homers down to right field, and especially in Yankee Stadium. So for me, he's got to let that ball get a little deeper, hey, look, just start putting it in play. Because once you start seeing the ball better, and that's one of the things, how many times have you talked to a hitter, and you've talked to lots of them, where the first thing is, well, I'm just not seeing it good. Well, that's why you're not hitting, because you're not seeing it good, you're not going to hit it. And so, that's the common thing. But
they talk about let it travel, and so many guys are afraid of getting jammed that they feel like, but they're not challenging Judge inside, and if they do, it's in off the plate. So think about driving the ball to right center field over the second baseman's head, hit it out to right field. He's right when he's doing that. And then he'll make the adjustment on the pitch inside to pull his hands through naturally. But if you're cheating to that inside pitch, you've got no chance to handle the ball away.
Yeah, Steve, I had both Tony Gwynn and Wade Boggs both tell me this, not at the same time, but in different situations, the same thing. And that is, good hitters get jammed. They're not afraid to get jammed. Right. They're letting the ball get to them. And so, and I think Aaron's, and obviously anytime you're in a huge slump and you're as good a player as that is, it's up, he's overthinking the situation, I think. But
no question about
that. They got
to
get him back on, boy.
For sure. And so for me, I got jammed and I was a bad hitter. And so, so it doesn't apply to everybody, but, it didn't matter where they threw it. I was going to jam myself more often than not.
Well, you had to be like me. I choked up that far. I took the handle out of the play and stood on the plate. I didn't have any power anyway. I wouldn't worry about, I wouldn't worry about doing too many things except trying to hit a line drive or a ground ball somewhere.
Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah. So the pitching situation in Los Angeles, I mean, they've got 2 great starts out of 2 guys. So, but where do you go from here now? I mean, your bullpen looked like they're getting tired from the other night, and they got to have some concerns, I would think.
I think so. Although, Walker Buehler, he doesn't go deep into the game, although he threw 4 shutout innings in the game against the Mets. But he's not the same Walker Buehler. So he was a little better in that last start. But look, the Dodgers right now, they're going to go to a bullpen day in game 4 where it's all bullpen. So this is an important game. And this is where the opening is for the Yankees to get back into the series. You get Buehler early. You get into the bullpen, and then it's a bullpen day tomorrow. And then you get back 2-2, and then Flaherty in game 5, where Flaherty was really good on extra rest in the first game against the Mets. But then when he came back in game 5, he was not the same guy because he pitched a regular rest. in game 1 against the Yankees, he had extra rest, but in game 5, he'd be on regular rest. And so I think there's some vulnerability there. The fastball velocity dropped the last time he didn't get extra rest. And so, look, they can't worry about game 5. The Yankees got to worry about get Buehler early, get a lead. Clark Schmidt's got to get it done. They've got to hold that lead this time to be able to, and they need Judge, right? Judge to be part of it. Because you know what it is. When your most predictable player plays predictably, it makes everybody else feel like, oh, yeah, that's who we are. Our captain just did that. I'm going to do this now, and I'm going to do that. I don't have to try to do too much right now. And I think it can get them all back on track again. And then that Yankee fan base obviously can get behind that team and become a little bit intimidating as they get on a roll.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for me, it's all around Judge, because if you can pitch around Soto because Judge isn't hitting, right, that changes that whole lineup, man.
For sure, absolutely. And look, we've seen them walk Soto to get to Judge, and it's going to be interesting. And then the question is, I wonder if Aaron Boone walks Betts to get to Freeman the next time. That hasn't worked out all that well. So look, here's the thing: you pick your poison. Right. And you can't base it just on the season's numbers. You got to see what your eyes are telling you too. And so I think that, some tough decisions for Aaron Boone moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. That was a tough call in game 1. That was, and I looked, so I saw the numbers the next day on MLB Network. I was watching, and Mark DeRosa brought up some great points about, you compare the numbers that Hill had in the last, I don't know if it's the last 2 years or the season, versus lefties as opposed to Cortez, and they're not even close. Cortez is much better against lefties. It's the only thing he hadn't pitched in 60 days or 70 days, and that was an issue. And when the other guy had been your guy for not just late in the season, but during the playoffs so far.
Yeah,
so
Hill's been great.
Tough decisions, man.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. And remember, the last time Freddie Freeman faced Hill, he homered against him, and so. But everybody looks at it and think Hill's been great in the playoffs, and I would have gone Hill. I was surprised about Nestor because I thought in that moment you needed predictability, and Nestor Cortez to me was a wild card. I didn't know what he was going to give you. He hadn't pitched since September 18th, like 36 days, I think it was, and is he what's his consistency in the zone? Sure, he threw simulated games, but that has nothing to do with what the energy is in a playoff game. And so, but it's a tough call. And you know what? If it works, he's a genius. And if he's not, then, he's the dummy. And that's just, unfortunately, as you know, the nature of managing a major league team, especially in New York City.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, this, I'm sure, make no mistake about it, I am sure that was discussed way before the game even started. Hey, if we get in a situation, who are we going to? I mean, those are the discussions you have at 1:00 in the afternoon sometimes with your pitching guys, and talk about, who's got, what matchups do you want to have in certain situations. So I know Aaron is, Aaron's sharp enough. He had already thought that out when it came about. But I think he's done such a good job in New York. I hated to have that backfire so badly, but like you say, managing, it's not an easy gig, man. It's not for the weak. I can tell you.
Not. I think that what we need in this game 3 is we need Ohtani and Judge to homer in the first inning. So Ohtani's shoulder's better. Judge gets back on track. The heavyweights are back in the mix for the fight. The crowd's into it. And I think it would just take this series that right now it's 2-0. It feels like, man, could the Dodgers run the table on this thing? I think it would get everybody back re-engaged with what this great matchup could be.
I think it's going to be a whole different series in New York. I mean, that stadium plays differently. They're at home. They're comfortable. I think this thing's going to go 6 or 7 games. I'm telling you, I don't know who's going to win it, but I just think that, the Yankees are awfully good in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I picked the Yankees to win in 7. And so I don't normally root for any team. I just root to be right. So I am rooting a little bit for the Yankees right now, just so I can get to be right about my prediction. But the Dodgers pitching, and you're right about Flaherty was great. Yamamoto, that was the best I've seen him in a long time. I mean, 1 hit through 6 1/3, and where the Yankees felt like they had the advantage in starting pitching, give credit to the Dodgers. They matched them so far, and actually maybe even pitched a little bit better to where it's put them up 2-0 in the series.
Well, obviously, managing in New York and being a Met, you don't necessarily root for the Yankees. But, I will tell you this. I spent 23 years in the Dodger organization. And if it wasn't for those guys, I wouldn't be sitting where I am today. So
Sure.
I'm kind of, my it's got a little Dodger blue in it right now, I can tell you. So
I get it. I completely understand it. How about the Freddie Freeman homer, bringing back Kirk Gibson in '88? You know, the game one home run against Dennis Eckersley, limping around the bases. I mean, it's just the baseball gods and what they do to line these things up. And it's amazing, the storylines that come out of these games.
yeah, I mean, of course, I was great friends with Mel Didier, who was the big advanced scout back then,
Sure.
and a great scout for the Dodgers. And he told the story about, before that game started, he told Gibby, he said, if you face Eckersley, he's going to try to backdoor that slider on you and be ready for it. And he did it and got it. And so, that's where, again, those great scouts, and I don't even know how many advanced scouts they have anymore because of all the video and all the television games now. But those great scouts, boy, they can really make a difference.
Well, I'll tell you, I will, when I was Mets GM, we'd play the Yankees in interleague play. And then again, the World Series in 2000, they put Stick Michael on us for weeks. He followed us for weeks. I'd see him. I'd go into the press room. There's Stick Michael again. And I'm dying to look in his notebook to see what he's written down, what he's going to do. And so sure enough, and back then, George Steinbrenner would not lose to the Mets. Like, he didn't care what happened anywhere else, but he wanted to beat the Mets. And so he would pit Stick Michael, and so they'd run a backdoor pick at first, where first base coach fell asleep a little bit, lost track of the first baseman. They'll throw the pitch outside, boom, they get the runner picked off first in a critical situation. They knew what they were going to do in that moment. They knew who they could run on to steal the base on. They knew what pitch. And so those advanced scouts, I'm with you, can pay huge dividends as long as they can present the information in a way that's digestible to the players and not overwhelming, because you get so much information it can be paralyzing sometimes.
I agree, Steve. And that's, as I watch these games, and there's so much rhetoric now about analytics. There can be too much. The old adage, if you're a big league player, you better be able to hit a fastball. So you better be able to hunt a fastball, because you don't want to get beat by a fastball. And obviously, you make adjustments, but sometimes when you start talking about percentages, well, it's a 2-2 count, and I know 30% time he's going to throw a slider, and there's another 30% chance he's going to throw a changeup, 10% chance you're going to get a fastball. You put all that thought process in those hitters' heads, man. It's tough to pull the trigger sometimes.
It is, and I think Aaron Judge is caught in that a little bit right now. Taking a fastball down the middle, then he's mad at himself, and then he'll chase a breaking ball on his own. So he's like, I got to be more aggressive, and it gets you, sort of playing that way. I will tell you that I always thought to myself, sit on the fastball, adjust everything else.
Absolutely.
Right?
And Steve, sir, again, I don't know. I know Eric Chavez, but I don't know a lot of the new hitting coaches that are around the leagues today. But I know one thing. I heard of some of the greatest hitting coaches. I had Rod Carew, and I had Ben Hines, and you're talking about Walt Riniak. They all said the same exactly what you just said. Hey, right. You get in there and get ready to hit a fastball, and then you adjust. And there's nothing wrong with taking a hit once in a while the other way. Right. 2-out singles sometimes win you a lot of games. When you got a guy standing on second base. So
now the other guy.
I just think there's so much information out there now. I think it can be overwhelming for some of these guys.
It can. So Tommy Kahnle for the Yankees has thrown 56 consecutive changeups. I might look for a changeup against him. I think I would abandon my plan of hunting fastballs, because the thing I don't quite get is just show a fastball every once in a while, just to know that the hitter has to think, to keep them honest about it. But at this point, I think everybody has to look for the changeup and try to hit it. Right? At this stage, if he's throwing 56 straight changeups, I'm not looking for anything other than a changeup, and I'll take it if he throws
it. You got to have a plan. When you get in that batter's box, you can't sit there. Guys who are guest hitters don't hit nothing. They have plans, and there was a time that I had a player one year who we had a stat. Remember Sterling Hitchcock, the left-handed pitcher,
sure.
good changeup. We had a stat that 39 times during the season, when he got in a 3-1 count, he threw a changeup. 39 out of 39. I mean, it wasn't like 39 out of 4, 39 out of 39. And sure enough, one day and this guy was a good player, got in the batter's box, 2-3-1 count. And I said, this ball's going to go a long way because he's going to get a changeup. And he took it right down the middle. So when the game was over, I said, I mean, what happened? He said, I hate hitting changeups. I hate hitting changeups. I said, it's like taking batting practice for heaven's sake.
Right. It's so funny. But yeah. Hitters are weird. I mean, right. Yeah. I mean, just the way that it's the way players think and what makes them go. And then the lies we tell ourselves about, it's not us, it's the pitcher, it's the umpire. It's just, in order to deal with failure, we've got to come up with these different scenarios because otherwise it becomes too heavy as a player to take it all on. And all of the different things that we tell ourselves as players, if people knew what was the noise in our heads when we're actually in the batter's box, they'd be amazed. Yeah. Yep. And I've heard it. I've heard players talk about I had a guy one time who told me, he said, Terry, he said, I know I'm a big league player, but he said, I got to tell you, there are certain times when I can't slow my heart down. And that's when you're worried. I mean, they think, holy cow. Right. And that's what the game, especially at that big league level with all that noise in those stadiums, that's what you have to be able to do. I mean, we brought in one year in New York, we brought in the Navy SEALs, and that's all they talk about was when they're out doing their missions, they slow their heart rate down. So and it's easier said than done, I can tell you. Yeah, right. But emotional control is a trait that is so critical for baseball because this is not a game where you have to try harder, right? It's not about effort. It's about being intense without being tense. It's about concentrating without sort of thinking yourself into the ground. And the way to do it is to breathe and to get yourself under control and not overthink and not overtry, which was, for me as a player, I'm a trier at almost if I didn't get a hit, I would grip the bat tighter and I'm like, I've got to get a hit this time. And you start saying, I have to do this. You're going to chase pitches out of the zone. I always say that you could put a gorilla in the batter's box and he wouldn't have been 0-2 as much as I was 0-2 as a hitter. It doesn't matter. They could stand there. I was 0-2. I would take the fastball down the middle, get mad at myself and say, I got to swing this time. Swing a breaking ball in the dirt. It's 0-2. Then the next time I think, all right, I'm going to be aggressive on the fastball. They throw me a breaking ball. I take it, strike one. Then I think, all right, well, now I got to be aggressive on the fastball again right here. Be ready for it. They throw me another breaking ball. I'm 0-2. It didn't matter, Terry. I was 0-2 more than any hitter in the history of the game. Yeah, well, and when you're a guy like my size, in pro baseball, they don't walk guys like me. I'm sorry. They make you hit a single because that's all you're going to get. So, and I will tell you, I had to hit early in the count because I was going to be 0-2 fast. And I had a player when I managed in Houston. His name was Chris Donalds, and Chris was a really good, great Met, by the way. Original Met, Chris Donalds. Was he? Yeah. Man, I loved him. He asked me one day about how I used to hit the slider, and I said, "Sliders? They don't throw me sliders." I never saw They throw me fastballs down the middle and say, "Here, hit it." But, you're not going to hit it over everybody's head. So, that's funny. That's funny. Well, Steve, I know John's got some questions for you, so he's waiting in the wings. So there he is.
All right. Thank you, Terry. Good to see you again, Steve.
You too, John.
I want to direct some of the questions to the New York Mets, who had a fabulous season. I want to get your thoughts on the Mets as they now prepare to put together their 2025 team. There are over 10 pending free agents for the Mets, many of whom were key pieces of the 2024 roster. And they got a lot of dead money coming off the books. So we're going to put up a graphic for that to take a look at what they got coming off the payroll this year. There's a lot of money coming off the books, and for the New York Mets this year, what an incredible season for them. Give me your assessment as the Mets now kind of take a look at this upcoming off season as it relates to them and all the financial flexibility they now have after a very surprising season, which took them to the NLCS.
Yeah, I mean, what a great season, and exceeded my expectations. I thought they'd have a chance to compete for the wild card if Kodai Senga came back healthy and pitched a lot. But I didn't anticipate Jose Quintana being what he did. Sean Manaea doing what he did. I mean, the pitching was Severino took his game to another level. And so A lot of the offseason decisions they made, they got more out of those players than I really thought they could. And I will tell you that David Stearns, for me, I always admired what he did in Milwaukee, because at the end of years, they would tear it apart and they'd put it back together, almost like you're saying, okay, I'm going to take apart the car, put it back together. And they never had any parts left on the floor. Like, they put it back together the same way with different names from one year to the next. And so it gives me a lot of trust. Like, I think David Stearns is an outstanding executive. And I think they made a lot of really good moves this year. They've got, this is going to be an interesting year for them as to whether it's going to be a transition year that will build towards something. Because I know they targeted 25 as being the year. Right. Last year wasn't necessarily what they thought was going to be the year to go to the playoffs. They were looking more at 25. And you can see why, with all the financial flexibility, where to go. Now, the challenge is going to be, you've got a lot of money to spend, but players have choices too. And you may target every right guy, but they may choose to go wherever they want to go. But I like the idea of having a solid core still there, which they do. They've got a chance to rebuild the team to make it look different, but still be very good. And I think different from one year to the next is always good, because you never come back the same from one year to the next. You need something fresh and something different in the team that you're putting on the field. And I think the pitching staff is going to be the one key thing as to where they go, considering some of the guys who are free. Now, they got a lot of money to play in that area, but I think that there's a lot to look forward to and have hope about. But they would be a really fun team to be a general manager for in the winter, because you've got so many different ways you can go, so many different iterations of how you can put the team together, financial flexibility to do it. You built up the farm system a bit. You've got some of the young guys starting to impact the major league team. The Alonso situation is obviously one they need to address to figure out what they're going to do with that. And the way I would play it is I'd want him back. I think that his asking price is more than my paying price. And so what I would do is I'd let him test the market and let him see what's really out there for him and what's not, and then be there on the back end to see if there's not a deal to be made.
You think it'd be wise for the Mets to maybe give him, 2-3 years, good money, maybe with an opt-out after 2 or 3 years, because he is a franchise player. He's a homegrown player. The asking price, obviously, when they made an offer last year, he didn't accept. I think it was in the vicinity of 150, 155. But he is a very important player for the Mets franchise. So how much flexibility do you think they're going to have with Alonso, and how high of a priority is he going to be for the team?
Yeah, so I don't think David Stearns is going to base his willingness to pay upon what Pete's meant for the franchise. I think it's going to be based upon what they think he can be moving forward and what he is and how it fits into the team. And then, with slugging first baseman, right-handed hitters, what's the longevity for his game? Is he going to be good for the next 6 years? Because if I'm Scott Boras representing Pete Alonso, I'm looking for a 7-8 year contract. Now, if I'm the Mets, that's not in the realm of my wherewithal. I'm not paying that. And so that's why I've got to let the market figure it out. I mean, I think there's, and then what happens is you've got Freddie Freeman's contract out there. You've got Matt Olson's contract out there. Paul Goldschmidt's an older contract out there that all says this is the range for first baseman. And, I think Pete Alonso looked at it, thinks he's Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge is to the Yankees what he is to the Mets. You look at the power numbers now, he's not Aaron Judge. But he's been the big power bat in the lineup. And so I think that and you hire Scott Boras to get you the most money, not take you back to the team that you like. And so I think the deal's going to lead everything. But I think that it may come back to the Mets. And then the question is, agents make their money not necessarily on how much money they get per year, but they make it by getting the extra years on the deal. So I want to get paid at the age of 37 like the player I am at the age of 30. Where look at who I am today, but you're not going to be that same guy at 37, but you want to get the length of the contract that pays you like you are that player. So I think that I can't imagine it's more than a 5-year deal for him from anybody. And my sense is it's going to be in the $25 million a year range for him. And, that may come back to the Mets as something that they can get done unless somebody gets crazy. And there's always somebody out there that might. I mean, I could see Seattle needing a first baseman, wanting a big right-handed power bat. I could see the San Francisco Giants, who just can't hit for homers, don't have any aircraft carriers in their lineup, saying, you know what, we'll take a big right-handed bat with our park and pay a little premium for it because we can't seem to get anybody else to take our money. So I think there's going to be some competition, and somebody might price him out of the Mets market, but then go get Rhys Hoskins, who had a really nice year in Milwaukee last year. Now I know Mets fans and Mets had a little run-in with Rhys Hoskins and McNeil, and Hoskins had a little thing, but the guys get over that stuff. But there will be other options out there.
Look at Jesse Winker. He was so hated by the Mets, and
right.
And he became beloved when he came onto the team this year.
There's those guys that when they're on your team, you love them, but when they're on the other team, they're like, that guy's a villain. Josh Donaldson was that guy all the time for everybody. He's on your team, he's your teammate, you loved him, but and Hoskins has a little bit of that in him too.
Absolutely. Well, the Mets have $178 million coming off the book, so there's a lot of flexibility there. Steve, with the current ownership, with Steve Cohen and Alex Cohen leading the ownership group now, the front office leadership by David Stearns, and rookie manager, first-year manager Carlos Mendoza, in your opinion, have the Mets become more of a desired destination for players, perhaps in this offseason, since they finally seem to have a more stable franchise than they have had previously?
Yeah, it's good. It's an excellent question. When I took over as Mets general manager back in the late 90s, the Mets were the team on everybody's no trade list. Like everybody I had interest in, they're like, oh, you're on their limited no trade list. You're on their no trade list. I'm like, man. But then when we got Piazza, it changed the perception of the organization. And we went from being like a good little franchise to being like a team that was committed to trying to win. And it set the tone. I think Steve Cohen is clearly a guy who wants to win. And I think that the way watching the Mets play this year, they were so much fun to watch. They loved each other. They supported each other. And these were veteran guys who've been around each other. The time that Nimmo beat out the infield ground ball when he's got the plantar fasciitis and it led to a run scoring, and then the inning ended and Lindor went out on the field and hugged him. Like that to me was like respect. And so there's a lot of really good things there. So I do think the Mets are an attractive team. I don't think there's any question about that. And because with the amount of money, Steve Cohen's going to be committed to winning. And there's always going to be one more dollar out there with his face on it than any other team. And so I do think the Mets now are on the radar for everyone.
Yeah. And you talked about that Piazza signing. It was October 26th of 98. After being acquired during the season, Mike Piazza signed with the Mets, a then record 7-year, $91 million deal to stay with the team. Can you talk about that extension as it came about before Piazza hit the open market? Was that an easy deal for you to do and for the Mets organization to bring him back before he hit that free agent?
Right. So we had gotten him, in season, and we paid a hefty price to get him of prospects. And like I knew that I was trading away. I made trades to get Al Leiter, to get Dennis Cook. I'd given a lot of prospects to the Marlins and Dave Dombrowski because they were disassembling that 97 team that won the World Series because they didn't draw enough fans. So they were looking to trade away all those guys. And so I had been in on Kevin Brown. I was in on Al Leiter. We got Dennis Cook. So we brought players in. And so when Piazza became available, it went from the Dodgers to the Marlins. I called Dave Dombrowski just seeing initially they were going to hold him. And then he decided that he called me back and said, I think we're going to go ahead and trade him. And so I knew all the players that Dave liked in our organization. And he knew our organization well because we had made all these other deals. So, but we had to decide as an organization. We had Todd Hundley coming back from Tommy John surgery as a catcher, which wasn't common back then. And he was due back early June. And this was the end of May when Piazza was going to be made available. So we had to make a decision. And we wanted to make the deal to get Piazza. And I said, I'll figure out what to do with Hundley. We'll put him in the outfield. We'll do something. But we got a chance to get Piazza. It changes our team. And so, but internally, there was a lot of debate about it that we actually backed off on it. And then as Piazza still hung out there, I got the business people, the baseball people together, sat with ownership, and made a presentation that we really need to do this, and got everybody on board and convinced ownership that we should. Making the deal to get Piazza was pretty easy with Dave Dombrowski because I knew who he liked. And so we were able to close that out quickly. Then Piazza got off to a little bit of a slow start. Then he hit a ball in the gap, won a game. And then the Mets fans loved him. Everybody loved him. He took off. He was that superstar. And at the end of the season, we wanted to re-sign him. And my plan would be to re-sign Piazza, trade Todd Hundley. Hundley by then was going to be healthy to throw. Teams could bring him in as a catcher. And so the World Series in '98 was Yankees and Padres. I was in San Diego for the World Series and went to visit with, and so I was at the World Series in San Diego. So I drove up to Beverly Hills where his agent, Beverly Hills Sports Council, represented Mike. And I had known that the Dodgers had offered him about $87.5 million and got rejected. And so I knew the range of it. And so I drove up there and went in to sit with them. And I went in and I said, I'll offer you I offered them what they had rejected. And they're like, Steve, come on. So they pull out the newspaper, and one of the New York newspapers had a quote from Nelson Doubleday, the Mets owner, saying, we'll probably give him about 91 million, see if we can't get the deal done. Steve, your owner already said you're going to go to 91 million. And I said, if I do we get the deal done? He said, yeah. So we got the deal done within 5 minutes of me showing up there. And then I said, well, here, wait. Okay, so look, I can't call my owners and say the deal's done. I have to at least seem like I negotiated a little bit. So we sat there for a couple hours watching TV, hanging out. We ordered some lunch. We talked about some, performance bonuses and award bonuses, those sorts of things. And we just we're hanging out with buddies talking about the World Series and baseball. And the deal was done like that because Nelson had leaked out what we were going to pay. And so, it was the easiest negotiation I ever had was getting Mike Piazza signed. And thankfully we did. For me, it was part of a legacy for bringing him in the trade, then signing him. It justified the prospects we gave up because we now had Piazza for 7 years, and it put us on a really nice run that ultimately got us to the World Series in 2000.
Yeah, and it didn't have to go through that free agent route with who knows what he would have been offered.
Because when that door opens, you've lost any control there. And I think Mike really was intrigued by trying to stay in New York, understanding for him, brand-wise, New York was a great fit.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly worked out that way for Mike, who is so beloved in Mets lore, and what a fantastic Hall of Famer he became. Fast forward to today's days, those types of deals don't seem like they can happen anymore. And I pivot over to Juan Soto. That's not something Boris is going to do and, try to sign before he hits the free agent marketplace. What do you think in regard to Soto? What's realistic? I mean, the numbers are just being thrown out there now that they may want to have more than Ohtani. And I was talking to Terry before we started taping, and I don't think that's realistic. I mean, what is your just give us your assessment on the Soto situation. How long does it go? How many teams are involved? Are the Dodgers involved too with the Yankees and Mets?
So it's interesting. John Heyman reported today that the Dodgers would be interested if Soto wants to play on the West Coast. They'll be interested in him. Now, that's a lot of money considering that they're paying the $700 million to Ohtani, but that's where the $68 million deferred every year for Ohtani gives them financial flexibility and cash flexibility to consider bringing in other superstars. Plus, you got Teoscar Hernandez in LA who's making $23 million. He's free at the end of the year. You've got Chris Taylor who's got one more year making $14 million a year. So that gets you up to $37 million. That's going to come off the books for them at some point where Soto can start to slide in. So here's the thing. Scott Boras, having, dealt with him and watched him a lot, he wants to set records, right? He wants to keep moving the bar. And so Ohtani's deal is where he's working from, hoping to go beyond. Now, the one thing about it is Soto's 26. He turned 26 last Friday. Ohtani got a 10-year deal. Soto's going to look for a 14-year deal. And because of the extra 4 years, they're going to look at $700 million as being a possibility. Now, it will be with deferrals, because the Ohtani deal, where it is $700 million, the way it's structured, it's really like $469 million present value. So it's not really $700 million because of the deferred money being out 10 years, the amount of it all. So there's a way for Scott Boras to try to structure a deal to get extra years, right? Say it's 13, 14-year deal, defer money like the Ohtani deal did, but try to take the 7. I think they're shooting for a number starting with a 7. Now, the more realistic number is high 5s, low 6s, but with still some deferrals. But I think that there's so much creativity accounting that they can do with it that I think that they're going to look for a record-setting deal. And so I think the Yankees have so much pressure on them to sign him. Hal Steinbrenner's under so much pressure. If Steve Cohen gets in, it will be World War III in New York. You know, when I was there was always this nobody said anything, but we didn't go after Yankee players. They didn't go after our players, right? Our guys were free. They didn't go after them. We didn't go after their guys who were free. There was just that understanding that it didn't help either party to do it. I don't know that Steve Cohen plays that game. And so, you know, if he gets in on Soto, it could be, it could run the price up for sure. I think that the Giants have to be in on Soto. They need a star. The Dodgers may be in. The Nationals will be in. Remember, they had him before. They offered him $440. He said no. But they've got a really nice young core of players there. To get a 26-year-old veteran to lead them moving forward, I could see that reunion happening. I can't imagine the Phillies getting in unless they're going to they'll have to move Schwarber and Castellanos to get Soto in financially in some way. And maybe they could do it because they need to make more contact in Philadelphia. Got a lot of swing and miss in that lineup. But I think that I think the Cubs may be jumping in there too a little bit. But I think the market's going to be robust. And I think Scott Boras is going to slow play it, try to squeeze everything out of the two New York teams, and then to dangle the Dodgers into it as well.
Yeah, those major market teams. And you had a good point about Cohen. I mean, they have not really butted heads on these free agents before. And we were discussing it on last week's show with Mets radio voice Howie Rose. It's like, imagine if Cohen really does escalate this and they may need a first baseman. Imagine if the Yankees go after Alonso at that point, a little tit for tat there. So
right. I mean, listen, it opens the door for all of that.
Yeah, we'll be watching closely. Steve, I appreciate your time today. I'm going to throw it back to TC. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thanks, John.
Well, I just, I'll tell you those contracts anymore, Steve. And as the manager, of course, we don't worry about, you don't question that, and you hope every player gets whatever they can get. But I will tell you, this winter is going to be some interesting moves by a lot of teams because you saw what the Brewers did last year with keeping their budget under control and stuff. But it's tough sometimes for me to see these smaller market teams just get absolutely blasted out of the water by some of these contracts that are out there. But it just shows you the game's in good shape. I mean, you're talking about that kind of money being paid. You got to like where the game sits today.
Yeah, and look, I think the other thing is the Cleveland Guardians' payroll as a group was less than Shohei Ohtani's $70 million a year, and yet there they were in the League Championship Series. And so, there's still a pathway. It's narrower for the teams without money. They need more things to go right, less adversity, less injuries. They can't, buy the depth that other teams do. They can't play with everybody at the trade deadline. They've got to make different choices. They can still find ways to win because in this game, the worst team can beat the best team on any given day. And in the end, it doesn't really matter what everybody thinks. As long as you think you can play yourself and your team gets together, you can go out and win games.
Yeah, there's talent. I mean, talent wins. I don't care what the price of the talent is. Talent wins. And I have not seen as many minor league games as I did a few years ago. But you read. I read enough about some of these up and coming players that there's some really good players out there that are coming down the road now. And the colleges are producing big time players. And so it should be fun for some of these teams. And I always thought it was and especially in being a minor league manager, your job is very simple, and that is get your players better. You don't worry about, and even in the big league, you don't worry about who everybody else has. Get your players better and have them play the game the right way, and you got a chance to compete. But I just think I've always been amazed that there hasn't been more of a push to try to even out, like they do in football where they share the revenues. Everybody is, and so now all of a sudden, that playing field becomes a little bit more level, I would think.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what's tough is, because of where we are now, if you bought a large market team, you paid a hefty price for it. And with it comes the privileges of being a large market team, which is you generate more revenues. It allows you to have more money to be able to spend, to be able to compete in a different way. And, if I bought the large market team, I don't want to then say, okay, I want to be just like everybody else and let you share my money. And it might be the right thing for the game. But if I'm a businessman, I'm like, I spent $2.6 billion to buy the Mets. And now you're going to tell me that you're going to level the playing field for me to be like the Tampa Bay Rays. And so what did I spend the extra $1.6 billion on compared to that other franchise if we're all going to be the same team right now? So it is an interesting one. And look, the players are never going to agree to revenue sharing and the leveling of the playing field in any of that, because, it would mean a salary cap and a salary floor. And they don't want a salary cap. And so it'll never get there. I don't think, unless it's like really ugly work stoppage for a long time that we're trying to save the game. But short of that, I think that they're just going to keep tweaking this system, this very imperfect system that we have.
Yeah, it comes down to, Steve, good scouting. Go get good players. Go scout and get them signed and keep them for as long as you can, but find good players. And that's where the game has been. That's where it'll always be. And I've had some of the greatest managers in the game tell me it's all the game's going to come down to talent. Who's got the best talent, who plays the best. And so, and that's what makes it a great sport, because there are no givens, as we saw with the Guardians getting in. We saw some of those young teams that are, coming down the road, what the Kansas City Royals did this year so, it keeps it interesting, keeps it fun for me. So anyway, listen, I wanted to, I don't know if John's got any more questions. I wanted to thank you for coming on today, taking your time, and enjoy your time in Florida. Get out there and get some sun.
I appreciate it. Always great to catch up with you guys. Always a lot of fun.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Well, Terry, Steve Phillips, always great insights, great interview. It was great to have you guys do your little back and forth and get his comments on what was going on.
Yeah, he's a real sharp guy. He was really a good general manager, and I've always been shocked that guys like him don't get jobs other places. But it's in today's game, man. It's there are all of the prerequisites at one time that were being a baseball guy, and they're thrown out the window. You got to have a law degree now, and be able to do different things. And so, but Steve Phillips is a good man.
Yeah, it's a whole different skill set that they look for today, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt.
Now it's time for another Tunnel to Towers Amazing Hero of the Week segment. Let's go to that right now.
My name is Kurt Angle, and I represented the United States in the Olympics in 1996 and won a gold medal. Then I parlayed that into a pro wrestling career.
Eagle Slam connected.
And I wrestled for the WWE and Impact Wrestling for 20 years.
Tunnel to Towers Foundation made a promise we're going to help every single one of them.
I saw a commercial a few years ago for Tunnel to Towers, and it piqued my interest.
By giving $11 a month, you're joining us on our mission to do good.
I was like, wow, this is really cool what they're doing for families of our fallen heroes. And for the first responders and the veterans, I thought this is really cool. I want to be a part of it. My dad served in the Army for 30 years. He was in the reserves, I believe, for 20 of that. He was a hard worker, he was a construction worker, and he ended up being a master drill sergeant in the Army. We didn't have a lot of money, but he made sure we had what we needed. And he set a great example for all of us, and he taught me a lot of stuff about wrestling and about life. My dad died in a construction accident my freshman year in high school. When he died, we didn't have any income coming in. And we ended up being forced to move out of our house. And I remember how I felt. I was devastated. And so I understand what these families are going through. And to have an organization like Tunnel to Towers come in and pick you up and, carry you and give you a home to live in, I think that's just amazing. I think it gives them a sense of security. It lets them know that there's one thing that nobody can ever take away from them, and that's their home.
It changed my life. It changed my son's life. For me not to have to worry about things that were such a burden.
The Tunnel to Towers Foundation is paying off the mortgages for Gold Star families with young children. I'd like to ask you to donate $11 a month to support these efforts by going to T2T.org or calling 1-844-BRAVEST.
We'll have another T2T Amazing Hero on next week's show. And Terry, that's going to wrap it up. We only have a few more of these to go for the season. And I know you have a busy week next week. You're going to be down at Mets Fantasy Camp, aren't you?
I am, and I'll do the show right from there, and it should be fun. Maybe we'll have some surprises.
Yes, there are certainly some surprises in the works, guest-wise, and it's so next you're gonna have your ass in the jackpot next week, aren't you?
Won't be the last time or the first time.
Well, always, good luck with all those guys out there that are probably, 40, 50, 60 years old. And
absolutely. All of them. all ages. All ages.
It's going to be interesting. Take some pictures, will you?
I will.
All right. So you can follow Terry on Instagram and also on X. It's Terry Collins _10. You can follow me at John Arezzo on Instagram and X as well, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/The Terry Collins Show. It's good to see you always, as Terry. Until next week, we will be back. Have a great week, everyone. This is John Arezzo for Terry Collins. Take care, everybody.